Hello, Berlin. Welcome to Radio Spaetkauf. This is the Berlin podcast. We are recording live in the Berlin Comedy Cafe, but there's absolutely nobody here. It's an empty room. It's just me with my co-host Jöran Mandik. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. A bit eerie without that audience.
It's very eerie. There's a good reason why we're recording with nobody in the room. We're going to tell you about that later in the show, but it's got to do with some terrible health and safety regulation crackdown at this dubious premises that we've been recording at, normally with a very full crowd of people who cheer and clap. So you'll just have to pretend that for today. There also might be a bit of an uncanny echo in the room since it's void of bodies. But we have a very special guest who is helping us make this show far more interesting, and that is Ms. Caroline Clifford. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yes, this is quite eerie. Did they hear that I was going to come? Are you sure it's a health and safety thing? I just feel like this place has just cleared out. I'm taking it very personally, is what's happening.
Well, you're taking it personally because you have graced the stage of the Comedy Cafe several times.
Many times.
You're a stand-up comedian, among other things. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you describe yourself, Caroline, for our audience members who want to know a bit more about you?
Yes, I suppose I do lots of different types of things. I do like doing comedy, and I do like yes, I spend a lot of time in the Comedy Cafe, whether it be improvising or doing stand-up or producing stand-up or something like that. But between you and me and people listening, I do subsidize my income by being a computer programmer as well. But yeah. I try and do creative stuff whenever I can.
Okay, so coming up on today's show, we'll be talking about our plans to get me elected to City Council, as well as some news about health insurance for foreigners. Your cheap plans might not be accepted anymore by the Ausländerbehörde. And we'll also look at jobs in Berlin. How much is everyone getting paid these days? But first up, Joel, you were just in Paris, and I know you like giving us some insights of your travels. So what did you find?
I was lucky enough to get a free little trip to Paris to go to a conference. This is my scam of getting my cheap travels around Europe. I try and make sure someone else pays the flight costs.
So profesh.
It is, well, it's the least I've gotten out of my failed startup career is at least a couple of invites to speak conferences. But yes, I went to Paris and I had a nice time there. And of course I had a few observations. One of them was that Parisians, they love Club Mate. It's this exotic export that you can only find in a couple of bars, and they think it's, the most wonderful stuff.
Hot new drink.
€4 a bottle, which is what you pay in some Berlin clubs, actually, so that's not that steep. But I did notice they've come up with their own invention, and they're trying to palm it off as some kind of real thing that people do. And they call it a Alf, which is 50% beer with 50% Club Mate in a glass.
Alf.
Have you seen this anywhere? Has anyone else experienced this? I've never seen this anywhere else in Berlin.
Well, I've had a beer energy before, and it made me feel sick.
I suppose it's like a shandy, though, isn't it? It's like a sort of half lemonade, but it must give you a sort of a bit of a kick. I don't really see the point. I mean, at that point, you might as well just drink some bloody fizzy water or something like that.
Just put vodka in the mate.
Exactly. There you go.
Sorry, Paris, we don't like this invention. We're not bringing that one back to Berlin with us, that's for sure. So my other observation of my time in Paris was that I enjoyed their fantastic public bike system that they have there, the Velib it's called, which is everywhere. It's absolutely amazing how you can get around on these bikes. They have stations all over the place. It's dirt cheap. It costs like €1.70 a day, and then you get the first 30 minutes free. And if you get to a station within 30 minutes, you log in, then you can just take it out again for another 30 minutes for free. So that's how I was getting around this city.
Easy to sign up?
Yeah, really simple. You just stick your card in the machine.
Don't they have that here?
They have a far lesser version of that system, and actually this news item popped up, and I was happy to read this, that very soon Berlin's own public bike system is going to get a bit of an overhaul because the tender that the city government put out for running the public bike system was won by a new company called Nextbike, who've won a €7 million tender for the next 5 years, and they have to commit to installing 175 stations and 1,750 bikes. Now, the current system that we have is operated by Deutsche Bahn. That's the red and silver system called Cola Bike. And they have installed 1,650 stations with 1,600 bikes at 160 stations. And the system really isn't that great. I mean, have you used it?
Well, I've got a bike.
I've got a bike, yeah.
I've tried to use it once or twice, and it's hard to sign up. It's not as cheap. You have to pay for the 30 minutes. There's no free period. It's really not foreigner friendly at all, and there's hardly any stations around. And by comparison, if you the Paris system has 18,000 bikes and 1,300 stations. So Berlin has 1,600 bikes and 160 stations. So Paris' system is effectively more like 10 times bigger than Berlin's bike system. And the size of the city, Berlin is 3.5 million residents and Greater Paris is 10 million. So even if you're comparing it like for the number of, per capita, Paris still has about 3 times more bikes in its public system than Berlin does. And it really shows. You can find them everywhere. Everyone uses them. And Anyway, there's my observation. Just
good job.
I
Reporting
suppose
in the
those
field.
kinds of systems are just aimed at tourists, though, aren't they? Because obviously you have a bike if you live in a city and you want to bike.
In Berlin, I guess maybe we do have a higher bike ownership rate.
Yeah.
There, the locals even use them, but maybe that's what was the intention. Maybe that was the need, that there was more of a need for bikes there. But I find that just having them around does really encourage more. Like, you feel like it really feels like a very cycle-friendly city. After living here for a while, I used to think that Berlin was the most cycle-friendly city I've ever visited, but everywhere else is catching up fast.
Only number 12 on the Copenhagenize Index we last reported.
So, ruin porn photography is so hot right now, but being hip can be dangerous. Here is Joel with that story.
Oh, well, can I just interject here? I actually did some of this ruin porn photography, as Joel coined the term here, in Hanover on the weekend.
What did you do, Yuri?
So this would be very relevant to me personally.
What you went around photographing ruins?
Well, there's this one place called Zentrum. It's this gigantic, insane 60s complex. It kind of looks a little bit like that thing at Kotti that goes across the street, but maybe like 10 times bigger. And it all is connected in one big, giant pile of housing. And the whole thing kind of floats above street level. The first level is just parking, and then there's shops, and above it is houses. But the shop level and the parking level, they're completely gutted. It's ruinous, but still the people live above it in these apartments. It's amazing.
Sounds like
if
an
you're ever in
accident waiting
Hannover,
to
you
happen.
should totally check it out.
Speaking of accidents waiting to happen, a 30-year-old American was badly injured after he fell through some rotten floorboards of an abandoned building. He was trying to photograph the old Kinderklinik in Weißensee, which is one ruin I haven't visited, actually. I've been to a fair few of them, but I haven't been to that one. Is anyone familiar with the Kinderklinik in Weißensee?
Nope.
I'm sure it's on that list of Berlin ruins. There's plenty of those lists around. But he fell through the floor. He had to be rescued by the fire brigade with one of those big ladders and taken to hospital. Broke plenty of bones. This really isn't breaking news, but it's just it's something to think about next time you're jumping the fence of an abandoned building trying to take pictures, which is, let's face it, a very popular Berlin pastime, at least for many people that I know.
I still don't want anyone to put a fence up around it. I'd rather some people fall through the cracks.
That's really the German way, isn't it? It's just like they no signs, no fences, just like let God sort them out kind of thing. Natural selection.
Okay, we've got some public transport news. A new station name has appeared on the Ringbahn.
Well, we all know that Berlin has an Ostkreuz, a Südkreuz, and a Westkreuz.
Where's Nordkreuz?
Well, funny you say that, Yuri, because that station would logically be
Gesundbrunn, I presume.
Very good, Gesundbrunnen, which is the northern point of that little axis there. But of course, it's called Gesundbrunnen and has been for many years. But now the Deutsche Bahn has been introducing the name Nordkreuz to signage at Gesundbrunnen. So now if you go there, you'll see the word Nordkreuz underneath Gesundbrunnen on several of the station signs. And this is leading to speculation that they're actually intending to change the name entirely, and they're just doing it stealthily, sign by sign, little bit by little bit. And
subtitles first to not get anyone upset.
That's right. Because there's going to be a petition against that. Because someone's going to not like that idea.
This feels a bit like Pluto, doesn't it? Like, is it an S-Bahn station? Isn't it? Lots of different opinions.
So, I don't really. I don't know. What do you think? Do we need to change the name of the station? They say that they're doing this just to help people navigate, because apparently people get disoriented when they can't find the Nordkreuz. Like they can't find the North Star in the sky, and they can't figure out their way around the city. But let's give people a little bit more credit. They don't really need a station called Nordkreuz just to help people figure out where north is. Surely.
I like that it's a set of 4, though. if you complete
Like Monopoly.
It makes me happy. It's like puts things in order. I kind of like it.
That's the German speaking right there. Thanks for that. Jöran.
That makes perfect sense. You are listening to Radio Spaetkauf. We're here in a quite derelict comedy cafe, Berlin. There's no audience to speak of. There's just chairs around us, empty in a jaunty angle. And I'm sat here with Noah Telson, who's going to explain to us why the hell that is.
You want from the letter A, from the start, or
From the start, maybe tell us who you are, Noah.
I'm Noah Telson. I'm one of the owners here at Comedy Cafe Berlin, and I do most of the bookings here. I do all the bookings for the theater itself.
And people might remember your dulcet tones from the from your own podcast.
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's kind of in hibernation at the moment. Piffle with my brother. Maybe people maybe we have a crossover audience.
We must. I mean, how many podcasts are there?
I listen to both.
Oh, all right. Good. Glad to hear it. Well, what the issue is, we are applying, or have been applying, as a proper theater, which sort of sets us apart from normal bars that you usually see shows in. So we're under a little bit more scrutiny. And one of the things that we've done before we even opened was soundproof the place and made sure that it was good to go for a theater. And just now, the regulatory agency, the Ordnungsamt, is responding to complaints about noise from the street and from neighbors.
You're getting a crackdown.
Yeah. And we wouldn't have any issues if the two neighbors hadn't complained, as far as we know. But that means that they're sort of scrutinizing us a lot more than normally. And so that means that they need us to retest the soundproofing, which is what we've done. And then also from the Bauamt, I'm not sure what the translation is, but
Building Amt.
building agency, says that we need to put an escape fire door in the basement.
The basement?
In the basement, which is off limits to pretty much everybody except the odd, inventory that needs to get brought up. So not even staff is down there during open hours.
Now, is this a result of you being too successful, meaning like that your comedians are too funny and everyone's laughing too loud?
I think so. I'd love to say it like that. I don't know if we can color it that way. I think we're just sort of bad luck with neighbors just the fact that we're here in Germany, we have to deal with the bureaucracy, and we are. So.
And they shut you down for a couple of weeks, cancel all the shows.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't completely shut us down. They did more or less threaten us with fines if we did continue shows. So it was in our power to keep the shows open, but we did run the risk of getting fined.
But meanwhile, every moment this place is open is a moment that your basement is just a massive fire risk.
Exactly.
There's stock down there that is trapped.
Yeah.
Should we say? I've been down there, and it's a horrible sight.
Well, I took a positive tone with the Ordnungsamt, and I said, guys, thanks for looking out for the stuff in the basement, because nobody is thinking about that stuff.
What happens if there's a fire? Where would the beer go? Kegs,
exactly.
Kegs cannot,
They can't stand the heat.
They can't climb up those stairs by themselves.
Exactly. So we're trying to take care of them.
Now, I'm somebody who has... Oh, okay, how do I say this nicely to myself? I'm the kind of person, when I go to a club, I stand next to the fire door.
Yeah.
And I've been in plenty of Berlin clubs and bars where I have definitely felt that, there's a few too many candles and low-hanging bits of fabric. And but this is really not one of them. I don't see any candles or low-hanging fabric.
You have electric candles.
Are you being unfairly targeted?
I don't want to say that I am. I mean, I would love to know that I am and be able to sort of rage against that, but I have a feeling anybody who's trying to do what we're doing is being treated the same way, unfairly, but the same way.
It's certainly true. I think it's like a sort of resistance to change, because as far as the comedy cafe goes, it could be a lot worse for those neighbors. Your shows are finished by 10 p.m.
Exactly.
This could have been any kind of late night venue or a club, God forbid, or anything like that.
You go anywhere else up Weserstrasse and it is a whole nother world. Our neighbors are lucky they have us, and we spent the time and effort and money putting this soundproofing in, which actually, I mean, we got the test done, and it is within the range that it's supposed to be in. And we've talked to neighbors who say they can't hear anything.
So tell me, Noah, because this is something that I think a lot of people think of when they move to Berlin. Maybe I should open a bar. What do you say to the people who come with the dream of
think again? I don't know. Think again. Yeah.
I mean, not just because they'd be competitors technically,
right.
but, trying to sell beer as well. But what's the actual process like of trying to start a small business in Germany?
It's a maze, and you should have a lot of patience. Be ready to spend a lot of time pouring through papers and reading over legalese and I guess maybe get yourself 2 German partners who can navigate the bureaucracy themselves. But yeah, just have a lot of patience, and if you set yourself a budget, double it.
When's the place going to reopen? Are you going to have a big reopening party?
I hope so.
Very quiet one.
Yeah, very quiet. No, we're going to be as loud as fuck. No, are we allowed to curse? Oh, God.
Yes, you can.
We're not sure yet. It's still a little bit up in the air. Hopefully this week, midweek, we'll know what the prognosis is.
Well, we at Radio Spaetkauf very much appreciate that you've welcomed us here every month or so to do a show, and we're looking forward to being back here again, hopefully mid-June, late June, when hopefully you're reopened and we can fill the room again with a cheering audience like last time.
Yeah,
because we all need that ego boost.
Yeah.
And but thanks for running the venue. Good luck with the Ordnungsamt, and
thank you guys.
You're listening to Radio Spaetkauf, the Berlin news show. This is an election year in Berlin. This September, the members of the Berlin Senate and the local councils are going to be elected. And we at Radio Spaetkauf, we've often made, I hope they're constructive criticisms of what we think of the city and some improvements about how it could be run. My little rant about public bikes at the top of the show being one of them. And a few episodes ago, we joked about the idea about actually running a candidate in the election. Well, dear listeners, we are actually going to do it. The man sitting opposite me, Mr. Jöran Mandik, will be, hopefully, if all goes to plan,
I am an aspiring politician now.
Maybe a candidate on the lists of people trying to get elected to the Berlin Parliament. Now, Jöran, in order to do this, we've done a bit of research about exactly how the local political system works.
It would be better to have a whole party running, wouldn't it?
Well, that was our one original idea we had. We said, let's create the Spaetkauf Party and run members just in order to. I think this is a multifaceted approach here. We're not just doing this because we want to hold power and run the city, but more as a kind of journalistic exercise of trying to figure out how the city actually runs and how people get to power in the city, and how we as international people, or at least Caroline and I, you're German, Jöran, how we interact with all of that. So. Right from the top, Jöran, what did we discover about trying to get you into a seat in the council?
Okay, when we were still thinking about maybe running as a party, we looked into what you have to even become a party. And to get elected, or to be able to be elected to the Berlin-wide parliament, which is called the Abgeordnetenhaus, parties have to register as a party to be tested, to be checked if they actually are a party, in fact. By 4 months prior to the election, which is May 18th. So we missed that deadline.
So that was last week.
A few days.
In any case, we should tell you what you would have had to do if you were going to do it as a party. You would have to provide a bunch of documents, including a party constitution, a party program, records of public events, and a whole bunch of other things, but really just a checklist. So maybe for next elections we should actually do this.
So since we missed the deadline as to register as a party, we thought no problem. Let's just register Jöran as an independent candidate. However, what did we find out there?
Well, we thought maybe this is the end of our dreams, but you can register someone as an independent. Problem is that only works at citywide level. So for the Abgeordnetenhaus, not for Bezirks level, which is a weird little fact.
So just to explain how the Berlin election system works, there's 2 levels. You've got the Berlin Abgeordnetenhaus, which is the sort of city-state level, because Berlin is both a city and a state.
That's right.
And then beneath that, you've got the local councils, which are called the Bezirks, and they have their own councils. Now, we thought that because local councils are smaller, that it would be easier if we got Jöran elected to the Neukölln Council than trying to get him all the way up to the Berlin Senate, which is the big house, you know. So what we discovered was that actually it's impossible to register as an independent candidate for the local council elections, which I found very weird because I'm used to thinking of local councils as to be the place where you can get anybody elected, basically. I'm from Australia, and in Australian councils, you get like school teachers and local shopkeepers and, you know, businessmen who stand as independent candidates and get elected. But in Berlin, you actually have to be a member of a party because that's the only way it works. They don't accept any independent candidates on that very low level of city government. So our dreams of an easy run into parliament with Jöran were crushed. And I was interested in why this was the case. So I decided to call up an expert on the topic. We did a little interview with Mr. Martin Delius. Martin is, or he was, the leader of the Pirate Party in the Berlin Senate, or in the Berlin Abgeordnetenhaus. At the start of this year, he resigned from the party, which is having all sorts of internal issues. And now he's sitting there as an independent, but only because he was originally elected as a Pirate Party member. And I called him up and asked him all about this system, how it works, and why it is that we can't get Jöran elected to the Neukölln City Council as an independent.
It's more like a traditional thing, you know. The German constitution states that parties are the key factor in our parliamentary democracy, and so it is written in the Grundgesetz. So it was said, and so it shall be in the future. At least in Berlin, there was a constitutional reform in the early 2000s where it was discussed to open that, and it didn't get a majority. That's the reason for not changing the traditional ways, sticking to parties.
It doesn't seem surprising that the traditional parties would vote against a reform that opens up for independence, though, does it?
Yeah. But what the actual list of parties running for the parliament this year is showing that it's not really hard to be a party, to get to be a party. You just need by law about 7 members, initial members, and you need to have your party constitutions. You even do not need any reason to be a party except want to be elected. It can be done.
Well, in any case, we'll continue the experiment and see what happens. But it was surprising to us that even at the very, very local level, the Bezirk level, it's not possible to be an independent, because in a lot of other countries and cities, the local council is the place where the most independents are found in politics, where you have really local representatives. Do you think that should be the case also in the local levels?
Yeah, it should be the case, but you have to have a reform of the local so-called parliaments, the Bezirksverordnetenversammlung, for that, because in Berlin, the local parliaments, the district parliaments, if you may say so, are part of the executive and not the legislative body of Berlin. And so it's kind of a mix-up between a parliament and a government. And to open that up, who is or should be able to register for being elected into the Bezirksverordnetenversammlung, you need to have a reform towards a real parliament, a real district representative thing.
I was surprised when I visited the Rathaus the other day in Neukölln, and I saw a picture of all the people who are actually elected. There's a lot of people who are sitting in that Bezirksversammlung. What do they all do?
Oh, you have to ask them. I'm a member of the bigger parliament, you know that. But no, they are actually discussing very local problems, like where do you want to sell this area? Do you want to build a house or a school or a kindergarten in that area? How do you manage that park or this park? How do you deal with youth crime, youth unemployment in one area or another area? They have to deal with a lot of things that they're coming from the top, from the Senate or out of the Berlin Parliament, where we most of the time we make laws or demands to the district parts or the different parts of the city. Towards them, they have to fulfill our demands. I think they are. Oh yes, they are responsible for naming streets.
Well, and the Berlin political system is it's called a Feierabend parliament. Is that right? So you don't actually work full time as a parliamentarian.
The Bezirksverordnetenversammlung, the district parliaments are kind of, how would you say, voluntary parliaments, like Feierabend, after work parliaments. The Berlin parliament itself, on the state level, is what we call half-time parliament. We are here kind of employed, which is not really the case, but you can say so, for half a day, 20 hours a week, and paid as such. But as you can imagine, as a representative for a city with about 4 million people, you work, or you most probably have to work much more than 20 hours a day.
And is that also the case for the on the Bezirks level? Are they also paid, or are they volunteers?
They are not really paid. They get a Entschädigung for the meetings they have to attend, for driving and some resources they need, like for doing their work, like computers and stuff. They get that, but they're not really paid in a traditional employment situation. Yeah?
Okay, so a plan to get rich by getting elected is not going to work.
No,
out.
it's not going to work out.
Okay.
Germany is really keen on not paying their politicians really well. That's why most of the politicians on a federal level, at least, are going to be employed by big companies after they were in the parliament.
And tell me, Martin, what are you doing these days? You were, of course, previously the head of the Pirate Party, and then you stepped down at the end of last year. What are you spending your time on now? How do you even describe yourself? Are you affiliated with the party, or are you independent?
I'm kind of independent right now. I'm not a member of any other party yet, but I'm affiliated to the Linke in Berlin, and I'm planning to work with them on the issues I was once elected on and have discussed within the Pirate Party. I'm still a member of parliament, and I'm the head of my caucus still, even though the caucus has the name Pirate or the name Pirate in it. And I'm not a member anymore, but that's the beauty of having a divine of power and a constitution which states that parties are, after all, not defining the work of the parliamentary members, which should be only driven by their own mind and their own freedom of will.
And do you plan to run again for the next election?
No, I'm not, because therefore I would need a party. I do not have one right now and haven't had it some months. So I'm not running for the next election, for this election, maybe some other election later on. I don't know yet.
While I was talking to Martin, while I had him on the line, I thought I would use the opportunity also to ask him some questions about an issue that he knows very much about, which is the Berlin airport, the BER disaster.
Are they still doing that?
They're still trying, yes. And the airport, of course, is one disaster after another. And Martin Delius in the Berlin Abgeordnetenhaus is actually part of a committee that's been investigating the airport, asking questions about it, trying to figure out what went wrong there. So while I had him on the line, I thought I'd ask his opinion about what really the core of the problem was, where it all started and where it all went wrong. Here's his answer.
In short, structural and personal incompetence on any level you can imagine. There was the plan to let the airport be built by a company, professional company, who's able or shown to be able to build airports, actually. But then out of a political situation that was quite complex, the Berlin and Brandenburg and the federal government decided to build themselves, let the existing Flughafengesellschaft, as a professional for running airports, built another airport, and that was the reason for the structural incompetence I mentioned. And after that, if you have a incompetent structure for such a project, it is like a honeypot for incompetent personnel, and that's what we got.
So perhaps if the airport had been built by a professional airport building company in the first place, we might have a different situation.
We might still pay more than we expected, but I think we wouldn't have this huge amount of problems and every time you solve a problem or you see a problem with the airport, and a new one pops up. And this is a situation you wouldn't have with a competent project management and construction management, which is necessary to build a project with several billion euros.
There are some people who speculate that the airport might not ever open. Do you share that view?
You can say that if you throw enough money on a project and take your time with it, you will most probably finish it. So that's my opinion. The government in Berlin and the other governments decided to throw as much money at the BER as it would take to finish it, and they are willing to run this project until it is finished, no matter how long it will take. So I'm fairly confident they will accomplish it. The problem is, how do we get our money back with this airport? And that is something I do not see.
All right. Well, we're going to get this up on the next episode, which will be out next week. I'll send you a link, and that's really helpful.
Hey, cool. I will listen to it. I actually listened to a lot of episodes after we last spoke. At first, of course, to listen to me. Yes, I'm a politician.
Oh, cool.
I find your program very inspiring. It's really nice to have a professional English language podcast in Berlin, talking about Berlin. Well, that's cool.
So you might have noticed that we left that little bit at the end there with Martin giving us a bit of praise.
We're so proud.
Well, look, I'm happy to know that actual Germans other than you listen to the show, Jöran. That's all. So I'm happy. And influential people. Maybe we could get some of our agenda items into the Berlin Abgeordnetenhaus without even getting you elected. But if we do stick with that plan, Jöran, what's going to happen next? How are we going to get you into Parliament?
Okay, so we found out we can't get me elected at Bezirks level, but I can run as an independent at state level for the Abgeordnetenhaus. So we did a bunch of research and looked into what needs to happen for that. And it turns out the deadline hasn't been missed for that one. And in order to run as an independent, you need to collect 45 signatures of people who have the right to vote and live in your electorate.
Damn.
Well, I noticed.
You tried your best.
I noticed.
Dream is over.
Here at the Comedy Cafe, they've got a petition on the bar over there. It's that petition for the second round of Tempelhof referendum that we told you about on the last show, and they seem to have only collected a measly, about 6 signatures on that, and one of them looks like it's invalid because the guy forgot to sign it. So 45 signatures might be a little harder than we thought if just leaving it on the bar doesn't work. But we can do this, can't we? We can get you 45 signatures.
I have at least 3 or 4 German friends, that some of which might live in this electorate.
I've got that too.
The catch is that not everybody can sign this, can they? They have to be...
That's right. So in order to vote at Abgeordnetenhaus level, so state level, you need to be 18 years of age and hold a German passport and have lived in Berlin for at least 3 months. Same rules apply for actually being a candidate as well. So you couldn't run, Joel. That's the reason why I'm running.
And because you're the natural talent with the beautiful hair and the winning smile and all the others. But yes, I can't run. I'm an Australian/Estonian. I have an EU citizenship, and that entitles me to vote in the council elections, but not the state elections. That means I can't sign your form to say that I think that you should be an independent candidate. But I reckon that we can get by that deadline, which is in somewhere early July, 45 signatures for Mr. Jöran Mandik to stand as a candidate for the council. And in order to do that, I think we'll have to come up with some event. Maybe at our next live show, we'll bring along a piece of paper. We might hold a drinks night one night. Let's old-fashioned way,
Very cheap beer.
Wouldn't that be buying votes?
the beer's cheap, not free.
Buying cheap votes. The big question, though, Jöran, is what are we going to do with all this power once we've got hold of it? What are we going to do with your seat in the city government?
Yeah, we need to find out what I'm actually running on. I feel like the Spaetkauf problematic that has arisen last year of not being able to open on Sundays anymore. We'll have to crack down on those weirdos.
Or whatever the reverse of a crackdown is.
Yeah.
Stop cracking down on the crackdown.
We'll crack down on the police.
Crack down on the police. So that was the original starting point.
I'm interested in doing some base democracy here. I want people to write in their ideas of what I should run with.
Caroline, you got any ideas?
I would like it if you could make English the official language of Berlin. And also, like, it's sort of be a little bit rude if you speak German. And people say, you're in Berlin, could you please speak English? In a kind of passive-aggressive way.
Maybe how long have you been here and you don't speak English yet?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I've got a couple of points here. So I'd like to have online Anmeldung at the Bürgeramt. So I've said this before, but I can't see any reason why you can't just email in a PDF of scans of all the documents that you need to register your address, because as we know, it takes ages to register your address here. Someone could check it. If they think it's dodgy, then they call you in for an appointment. Do it in the reverse way, and save everyone a lot of time.
Maybe they could send you a GIF of them staring at you in a really unpleasant way, just to give you that feeling of having queued there for ages as well.
That's good. I also want to write cycling onto my political flag.
Cycling, yeah, that's a popular one at the moment. There was a big referendum about cycling that got tons of signatures, and everyone's talking about bikes at the moment.
I feel passionate about it.
I think we should ban cars.
I completely agree. Oh, well, not completely. I mean, let's be rational here.
Apart from camping.
Streets.
Apart from the campers. Well, every time this debate does come up, actually, you'll notice that the city government, because people are proposing all sorts of things like more bike lanes, and the city transport minister always comes back and says, but if we do that, we'll have to remove some parking spaces, which I think would kind of be that's another bonus, actually. Yeah. But they've got to worry about the driver vote, because the drivers are still a potent force in Berlin. Every one of those cars is a voter, and so the people in power don't want to lose those votes either, which might be why they're not throwing their weight fully behind the bicycle issue. But this is a little bit from the City magazine that I picked up this week, as might give a clue as to why Berlin is not so bike friendly. So City magazine wrote that while the rest of the city gets excited about bicycles, the mayor Michael Müller hasn't noticed. His official council vehicle is an Audi, which produces 216 grams of carbon per kilometre, making it the most polluting car in the Rotters Rathaus car park. So if the mayor of the city doesn't ride a bike, I mean, even, conservative old Boris Johnson in London, and he got around on bicycles.
Probably because he's been banned from driving there or something. I mean, I don't think he's the kind of guy that would...
Yuri, we missed out the deadline on getting elected, but to be honest, it really wasn't that hard to register a party, but because
we were just late with the idea.
We were just late and disorganized, and to be honest, if I look at the list of the parties that are running, I do question our own competence and wonder whether we actually should be putting ourselves forward as any kind of force for power, because have a listen to who else is actually running. There are 36 parties registered for this elections, and there are, of course, all the big ones. You've got the CDU, SPD, the Linke, die Grüne, all the usual ones, but there is also Die Bergpartei, and their claim to fame is that they organize a food fight each year between Kreuzberg and Friedrichshain on the Oberbaumbrücke. There's the Party der Wähler, which is a funny name for a party, which just means party of voters, which surely is every party. And they want to give free public transport tickets to everybody, which I believe is also a Green Party policy, so I don't think they're so unique in that. Then there's the Deutsche Gerechtigkeitspartei, and they want to have public pool temperatures reduced to improve health.
That is the number one point in their program, is it?
How is it unhealthy to swim in a slightly warmed pool? Is it like
bacteria growing?
Salmonella, something?
Does it make you more likely to urinate?
Band-aids come off more easily.
There's also the Menschenfresserpartei. Could you translate for us, please?
The Cannibal Party.
So,
if you don't really agree with my policies, maybe go for those guys. I'll endorse.
What are you up against, though, Yuri? Let's have a look at what the polls are actually at the moment, and who might be most likely to actually win this coming up election. At this point here in May, we're a couple of months away from the election. And the polls tell us that the SPD are at 23%, the CDU are at 19%. They've both lost a lot of voters since the last election, and in fact, together as a coalition, they would only get 42%. They wouldn't even have enough to be in power, as they currently are. So they would have to team up with another party in order to form power. So who might one of those other parties be? Well, we've got the Grüne, the Green Party are at 18%, which is amazing. That's almost as much as the CDU. So Henkel's done a very bad job at his little strategy of trying to crack down law and order. No one's buying that. They're all flocking.
Being a Henkel doesn't help, yeah.
Hasn't helped. Die Linke at 16%, which is quite amazing. That's a bit of a comeback for Die Linke. The scary one is AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, who the xenophobic party are at 15% of the Berlin vote. And then below them, we've got the FDP, the Forgotten Free Democrats.
Still not making the 5% hurdle.
They're still not making the 5% hurdle. Neither are the Pirate Party, who seem to have dropped off the radar.
What happened to them?
What happened to them?
They're a little raft. I like them.
Internal quarrels.
I like them. Internal strife, too much internal democracy, not enough in. They were all about letting everybody have a say in the party, whereas real political parties that hold on to power for a long time have a bit of a lockdown on their members and don't really allow sort of internal dissent very loudly, at least.
Did they ever have anything to do with the Pirate Bay?
That was their inspiration, yeah. They started off as a party inspired to support the Pirate Bay and defend the right, or go against copyright, basically, open free internet.
So now that we've talked about all this politics stuff, I want to make sure that everybody understands I am actually planning on running. It's not a joke.
You're not like the mentioned Fresse-Partei.
We are going to find out what you have to do. We're going to find out what happens when you're on the list. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of Berlin politics from a journalistic perspective through real life experience.
Are you going to need money
to run the campaigin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a good
what
thought.
What do they call it in America?
We hadn't donations, fundraising. We hadn't thought of that, had we?
We need a fundraiser.
We obviously haven't gone very far down the thought process of this year. We haven't actually considered that.
First things first, I need 45 signatures.
45 signatures, that's the basis. We can do that.
By next show. Everyone, come down to the next show. That'll be at the end of June, hopefully at CCB, if that's back up and running.
Please.
And sign the form.
Radio Spaetkauf.
Welcome back. You listen to Radio Spaetkauf. The ban on holiday flat rental has come into effect in Berlin. It's now illegal to rent out a flat for short durations online unless you're just renting out a spare room.
Which is a bit confusing because a lot of people have been told that Airbnb is illegal in Berlin now, but it is still active, and that's because if you have a spare room, it still is allowed.
You can still go on holidays and rent out your room.
Yeah. Your mum and dad can still sleep on someone's couch if they want, which was the original idea of the whole service in the first place. So some might say. But one district isn't actually bothering to enforce the law. So Pankow in the north says it's not going to actually prosecute anyone for renting out their flats one way or another, spare room or more. Well, they say because there's a legal challenge running through the courts against this law. So one of the platforms, which is named Wimdu, which is a competitor to the big one, is actually taking this whole law to court, saying it's it goes against their. I'm not sure what their argument is, but in any case, they say it's a law that shouldn't be enforced. That case has to run yet. It will be decided some point in June, and until that case is concluded, Pankow says that they not actually bother prosecuting anyone at all. Now, Pankow has a bit of a reputation for being a renegade district. They also don't prosecute any Spaetkaufs that open on Sundays. Yeah. A lot of other districts don't prosecute either, but Pankow even goes a step further by, for some reason, any of these places do get prosecuted, the Spaetkaufs, they actually reduce the fines to nothing. So there's no way a Spaetkauf in Pankow can get in trouble for being open, unlike the rest of the city.
Is Neukölln at a threat of Spaetkauf owners relocating to Pankow? I hope not.
My local one's got a great thing going where they sort of own the cafe next door. So on a Sunday, they kind of like stand outside really shiftily, just like, hey, you want some milk? You want some milk? And then they just they just usher you through the cafe next door. You go round the back, round the storeroom, into the Spaetkauf.
I've seen many good techniques.
I think it's inevitable that the Neukölln crackdown is. It's going to have to stop. At some point, they're going to have to allow those Spaetkaufs to open. I think that's just inevitable. But I think it will be a little bit sad because I really do love these ingenious devices that we're seeing spring up as the shopkeepers try and find ways of staying open. The little alarm systems that they've got going, the little doorbells and people on the watch. It's funny to watch.
And anyway, they're just going to be like, putting stuff like milk and fizzy water and chewing gum onto the black market. And I don't think that's good either. It's going to be in criminal hands. There'll be a whole Sunday black market going on. I don't think that's good either.
So Pankow has decided not to bother cracking down on the Spaetkaufs. That's been going for a long time. They've also decided not to bother cracking down on the holiday rental portals, which has made the city government the one step above them, as we've learnt, the Abgeordnetenhaus very angry, because the way it works is that the city tells the districts what to do, and they say that the districts don't have any right to pick and choose which laws they enforce.
That seems reasonable. Okay, so this holiday apartment ban was supposed to bring thousands of apartments back onto the rental market and theoretically by that reduce the housing prices. And last year the city introduced tougher rent controls, if you remember, which were meant to do the same thing. How has that worked out, Joel?
Well, it's almost been 1 year now since Berlin introduced the new controls, and they were supposed to cap new rents at 10% of average prices. But a recent study by the Berlin Tenants Association found that new rents have actually gone up 31% in the last 12 months. That's because it's up to the tenants to enforce the rent cap. First, they have to, that basically means that you move into a place, you have to notice that there's a problem, and you have to do something about it. What? And it's pretty difficult because firstly, you have to know that your rent is above the average, 10% above the average, which is kind of difficult to calculate or figure out where that is. You've got to get hold of the Mietspiegel and do that whole thing, which is not so easy.
And doesn't the average go up the more expensive things are anyway?
That's right. It's a kind of moving target.
Yeah.
And you have to know, so you got to do that kind of research, and then you have to legally challenge the landlord. So it's up to you as the tenant to actually do something about it.
It's insane.
Of course, they make it not worth it, though, don't they?
And so they're basically saying that that's the reason that this hasn't worked and that the rents keep going up. And I guess people are maybe nervous, or they're just so grateful to find a flat at all in the city.
Yeah, if you're just happy to find a flat at all, you'll be happy to pay these higher prices. That's why the rent cap's in, to prevent this kind of black market rent hiking.
I know so many people looking for apartments. I know people that have been here for 5 years that are still like kind of apartment hopping. It's sad.
Well, one little tip there, if you are looking for a place, by the way, is if you're in a sort of lower income or mid to low income, you can apply for what's called a Wohnungsgutschein, or is it Bescheinigung? VBS, it's called. You can get this special document that says that you've got a lowerish income, and then you can actually apply for a whole second market of housing, the social housing flats that are only available to people who have this document, and they're not even advertised on the regular internet portals. They have their own sort of special social housing internet portals where you can find out about them. So if you're in a lower income category, try that one out. Look up VBS, WBS.
My friend lives in one of those. It's very nice.
Yeah, they're nice flats too, and they're in
too much vegan cake though.
I don't think that's obligatory.
Well, tell them that. It's very sour.
Well, Joel, you took on the burden of actually fighting your own rent increase. Is there an update?
We've been talking about this for the past few episodes about me and my fight against my landlord who wanted to put up our rent. So the update is that we have actually finalized the whole process, and that's me and my 5 Mitbewohnerinnen, we've agreed to a €25 a month rent increase. The landlord wanted to put the rent up by €121, so we won by $100, which, yeah, thank you very much. It took a bit of work. What we had to do is go to the Berliner Mietergemeinschaft, the Renters Association, and become a member, which costs just €67 a year. So that's paid for itself already. So we basically argued that our flat was not up to standard and didn't deserve to have to be put up by the entire legally allowed 15% on old flats. And we used a special checklist. If you missed that episode, go back and listen to it. That was a good one. So our lawyer basically submitted this checklist to the court. The owner rebutted those. And in the end, we came to an agreement, which was $25. But one of the reasons that we had to pay anything at all was because the court realized that it's actually possible to install a dishwasher and a clothes washer in our kitchen. So we've got like 2 washing. one of
Your
the
kitchen's tiny.
Our kitchen's tiny, but that's not actually the criteria. The criteria is not whether you can fit both machines in the room at the same time. The criteria is whether you can connect both to the pipes at the same time. And because our landlord once upon a time put this tiny little connector in and onto the tap that splits it in two ways.
That costs €5 at Bauhaus.
It costs €5 at Bauhaus, and he's just made himself $25 a month for the rest of existence. So that's a little investment on his case. Yeah.
Smart man.
So the other point that the landlord won on was the existence of a tiny little cupboard in one of the bedrooms, which is apparently a luxury item. Like, this thing is so tiny you can't.
Ever since Harry Potter.
So basically, the moral of the story is join a renters association, because you'll need it one day, and it'll save you money. And don't install a two-way pipe splitting system in your kitchen. It might cost you more.
Here's a topic that scares every foreigner living in Berlin: health insurance. Things just got a bit scarier for freelancers who need health insurance to get a visa to stay here.
Have you had to go through this?
I did before. I got one of those like dodgy student ones when I was first here. And of course, because I'm British, I coasted on the NHS one for like ages, which you're only supposed to have for a week.
Yep.
And they was ask you, when are you leaving Berlin? You're like, well, in a week. And it was like 5 years ago. But now I get it through my work. So that's pretty cool.
Well, if you're a foreigner and a freelancer living here, you've got to renew your visa every couple of months or years, and usually you have to go to the Ausländerbehörde and tell them that you're doing a good job, and you've also got to present proof that you got health insurance. Well, here's a bit of information, and I've got to credit the blog Silicon Alley for posting the info about this one. The Ausländerbehörde has changed the rules about what kind of health insurance you're allowed to have if you're self-employed. The ones that people previously used were these sort of cheap international ones, a company called ALC and
I had them. Yeah.
another one called Mavista, I don't know how you say that. But now the Ausländerbehörde has started rejecting applications that have these cheap international plans. So these plans are way cheaper than the normal average health insurance, and for a reason. Basically, they don't give you any coverage except emergency. Unless you get like hit by a bus, they're not going to do much for you. The only reason you pay for these plans is to have that piece of paper when you go to the Ausländerbehörde. So it's almost like wasted money in any case. But now you're going to have to be forced to pay for an expensive regular German insurance company. And there's a double problem here, and that is if you're a freelancer, the German health insurance companies basically make up how much they charge you. That it's not at all based on any real level of income. They basically at one point said the average freelancer earns 2,126 euros a month, and if you happen to earn less than that, your rates are still calculated based on that imaginary average. So basically, the minimum you're going to have to pay is around between 200 and 300 euros a month, and it's going to go up from there. So that's really quite a lot of money. And so there's another loophole problem here, which is that you can't actually get a working permit as a freelancer unless you've got health insurance, and you can't get health insurance unless you've got a permit. So there's the way around this, apparently, that's recommended is that you ask the German health insurance company to give you a letter saying that you have applied before you actually get the insurance. You take that to the Ausländerbehörde, and hopefully that'll work. But you never know, because it's the Ausländerbehörde, and they just like seeing you, so they keep inviting you back for more,
That's really going to affect a lot of people I know, and they're all like the best people, the people who are just barely holding on by their knuckles, they're all the sort of bloody writers and artists. There's no way they can afford 300 a month. There's like 300 a month total income, I think, for most of the people I know. I think that's really going to be debilitating.
Well, that brings up another interesting topic, which was actually how much do people get paid in Berlin these days? And Jöran, you spotted a new survey that got out last week. What does it tell us?
Yeah, the company Job Spotting has put together the Berlin Startup Salary Report. That was a survey with just under 3,500 respondents, and findings include a large gender gap in salaries in startups in Berlin, with men in startups earning an average 3,333 euros, while women earn only 2,500 euros.
So we've got to mention, this is tech startups. This isn't average work.
Startups.
It's only
in general.
Only companies that would basically read the blog that put out the survey, which is people kind of more working in the IT field. So the average there, 3,300 for men, 2,500 for women, and overall average of 2,900?
2,900 is the best starting wage that's to be found around startup jobs, and that is for software developers. So if you're in IT, you're in luck. You might find a well-paying job.
Well, just to put this in context, the street cleaners in Berlin, the people working for the BSR who go along every day and clean up the streets, they have a starting salary of 2,300 a month. And the actual average gross, that means pre-tax income in general in Berlin is 3,010. And the average in Germany is 3,500.
Doesn't surprise me at all, actually, about the gender gap, because I've never felt any kind of like I was going to say sexual harassment, but just like any problems with being a female programmer, until I came to Berlin, and I went for like lots of different interviews and stuff like that, and people were treating me really weirdly. This one guy like literally said, "Oh, what is it like being a woman in a man's world?" Like as an interview question. As well, so it was just really bizarre. I mean, the place I'm with is absolutely delightful, but there was some just like, who's the freak style questions when I was there. So yeah, it's worrying that that's there. It shows you that it's real, though.
Did you get that job?
Hell no.
Did you want that job?
I guess not really. No, that was slimy as hell.
Well, if you are looking for a job in Berlin and you can't find one, why not try the Bürgeramt? They're apparently in dire need of personnel.
Yeah, we all know that the Berlin administration isn't very much up to scratch. And last year, the Berlin Senate has reacted to this bottleneck of administration, I should say, and has opened 402 new positions. Phew, that's a good thing.
402 new employees for the Bürgeramt.
Yeah, were granted by the Senate last year. Now it turns out, though, that the city actually has huge trouble filling these vacancies. And as of March 31st this year, there were only 47.5% of these vacancies filled. So about not even 200 jobs. So
is this because maybe that you have to line up to hand your application in and no one can actually wait?
Can't get an appointment to hand in your application.
You passed the first test.
Or nobody actually wants the job because they see how harassed the people are behind the desk once you actually do get to them.
There are a couple of reasons for this. And one is that there seems to be a lack of qualified applicants. But the other one is that the administration is very slow at processing filling vacancies.
There's a surprise.
According to a internal study, or maybe not a study, they looked at it and they found that it takes between just under 3 but up to 14 months for one job that is opened to be filled again, with an average of over 5 months. That's crazy.
So if you need a job, hand in your application and then take the summer off.
Especially if you need a job after Christmas.
After Christmas, yeah. If you've got long-term horizons here about your planning of your work, yeah, sign up now.
Okay, before we leave, we have a word from a sponsor.
It's time to thank our regular sponsors, the non-paying kind, of course. That's the Mobile Kino, Berlin's traveling cinema. Their summer season has started, and you can now find them doing open-air screenings every Tuesday at Insel Berlin, which is the Insel der Jugend, across the bridge at Treptower Park there, or Wednesdays at Griesmühle down at the end of Sonnenallee. They've got a great program of weird, interesting, indie, international movies, and they'll also be doing their Mobile Kino Weekender, a summer camp at the end of July.
Be doing a live show.
We'll be doing a live radio Spaetkauf out in the woods by a lake at the end of July, 29 to 31. It's a summer camp and it's a wonderful little trip, and there's only going to be, I think, 300 tickets available, so it'll be very intimate.
Last year was so fun.
Oh, you were there too, weren't you, Caroline?
That's right, yeah. Well, we were going to do a comedy show, but they booked us slightly before everyone arrived. So we weren't able to fulfill that. But we still got free tickets, so hey, we're definitely going to do it this year. There's going to be stand-up. Comedy, movies, music, and Radio Spaetkauf all in one place at the Mobile Kino Weekender. Check out their website for more details. But that brings us to the end of another episode of Radio Spaetkauf. As you may be able to hear in the background, the bar is filling up. I don't know about this whole claim of being closed. They seem to have a lot of people out there buying drinks.
Yeah, what is going on?
Did they just not like us and they didn't want us to record with our audience? They were jealous. That was a problem. Noah's knocking on the door. We've got to wrap up our show. Caroline, thanks very much for joining us.
No problem at all, yeah. It was very enjoyable.
Can you come back again sometime?
I'd love to. Why not? Especially when you've got an audience.
Yeah. That'll help.
All right, tschüss.
Tschüss.
Radio Spaetkauf.